Any other questions?
We were adding something on Duncan.
Yeah,
Something on our system, our permitting
I was calling
system.
implementation software, enforcement software, I need to
Okay.
figure that out. But yeah, so I'll incorporate these and definitely get a revision out for the next, next, whether it's the 17th or, I had this, going out the first meeting in January, so we've got 2 meetings to hopefully, wrap this up, get the revisions worked out, and then see who bids on it.
You might wanna, instead of asking for ask for a couple alternatives for on recommendations, because if they come with a single recommendation, then that kind of boxes us in. Why are you doing what you paid the consultant, now you're not doing what they told you to do?
That's a good point. If we don't like it, it's like, oh, okay, well.
So do we want, who's gonna, like on Wilson, the consultant does the work, but there should be points where they come back and then get feedback. If we need more data, like in Wilson, where we want, we want you to collect this, who is the board gonna have an opportunity to say, wow, now that we look at this, need you to.
Is this related to the RFP or process? Because we can make a note to really talk through those kinds of
I'm just
considerations.
thinking, is there reporting?
Yeah,
there's
that you want to
the
put in
technical
the
committee, but at least some reporting out to the board so we can react at least in the back gathering technical phase if there's stuff. We realize there's a gap here.
And I do know I need to make a communication plan with this, and so I think within there that'll be reporting to the board.
Right, there's different
I think that may
audiences
be
to
covered there.
communicate to.
Whether or not we need the consultant to participate in that
Yes.
report, I guess I'll need to
We
be
would
clear
need
for
that
the.
meeting.
Yep.
So there's
the
time
contract.
to consider that, the communication plan, it's not
Yes.
necessarily that's detailed as part of the RFP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have 2 quick questions. One is, I'm imagining that the consultants will incorporate as much of the bicycle activity in their analysis. It's not just car-based.
Correct, yep.
Okay, I mean, I understand there are some, some mentions of this, but not, anyway, okay, so that's good. And then secondly, can you clarify what you guys mean by Duncan, reaching out to Duncan and having him report to us these software modifications for purposes of, how does that affect the traffic flow?
Did I
That's
mention
more
that?
for
Or?
policy, right? No, someone had mentioned that we would be reaching out to Duncan. It's Allison's.
We're doing a regulatory review, but they should review how we're, mechanisms and software we're using to, permitting systems and stuff. Is there other ways, or is it working? Or if they propose something, it has to work with software and stuff. You gotta be able to implement it.
Well, like when we were talking about the overnight fee, and it was like, well, Duncan can't do a $1. Remember, can't we do $1? And there was no, Duncan can't do $1. It has to be $2 or more. So I mean, there's a lot. The cost to reprogram something in Duncan is it's expensive.
For
So,
help. Go ahead.
so and our entire parking system, when the parking checkers and the people in customer service all happens on this software system that is both expensive and has limitations. So, we don't want the consultant to come back with something that's gonna be impossible to do with the Duncan system. It just has to be a factor in what they're looking at.
But we're assuming that we're gonna continue with Duncan, I wouldn't make our policy decision based on a current outsourcer that we have.
Well, how long is our contract with
Yeah,
Duncan?
when does that end?
Do you know, Chief?
I thought it was coming up this year for renegotiation.
Well, then we could go out for RFP on that one too.
Right.
Based on our needs of our community, not based on what they're willing to charge us for updating their software.
It's another conversation.
And my RFP item is not gonna say Duncan, it's gonna
Yeah.
say implementation software, so if.
Yeah.
Right, but I would
They
not
should
want that
know.
to limit the scope
Right,
of this.
I think it would be a comment on,
What's existing?
I think that would not happen. I mean, it could happen, you're right, but I think, so is there a
then
different way?
this is moot. It's like, what does Duncan want or say we can do?
Well, yeah, so to that point, do we need to change any of the language in the RFP to be more reflective of we need considerations of our current software, but then, if there are limitations within that, we also need to explore what other,
Yeah, I think that probably, you know, you need to understand what your software can do. If it can't, what are your other
Okay.
implementation options?
right.
Be it increased civilian presence for enforcement, or other
And all of that will have budgetary
glow-in-the-dark
impact.
tags in the windows, I mean, whatever the,
Right.
I'd love to have a technical committee, I know this is another add-on, look at this, because I heard, like, this is modifying software, reprogramming. I just am surprised at this day and age that there are certain things that are so limiting in what they can do. For example, we can't give 20 free, I don't know. It's,
we can do anything with manpower,
More money.
you
sure.
know, so, I mean,
I mean, was
you
the
know,
software
I
written
mean, when I
like 20
start
years
hearing
ago?
things about permits to houses,
It was.
you know, except for one within, you know, per household within these many exclusions, well, our software program, somebody's gotta deal with that. The software program can't be programmed to make those valuations. You know, so, I mean, again, just understanding what can be automated and what are the other input factors, I think it's a reasonable thing to at least walk away with coming out of some of that and then the work and.
Well, anything can be modified, it's just cost
Exactly.
limited. So
Yeah.
we don't wanna limit what we should, like, we should have a recommendation on what we should do, not, well, what you can do based on what you're currently spending.
Right, but
Because-
but you need to understand, Duncan, you need to understand the contract, how the contract's set up, and how it's administered, and how it, and the cost, and that's part of this, that, you know, if we're gonna actually implement something, we need to understand what, you know, what that's gonna mean in terms of Duncan or whatever other software, but.
Does that give enough?
Yeah, I definitely need to make a whole section on that, and
Yeah.
I'll make sure, I'll try to get the wording as best I can.
Thank
But
you.
you'll have
The
another
cart,
kick at it,
not the
obviously,
horse.
before
Mhm.
it
Yes.
goes out, so.
Great, thank you for all your considerations. I would say that if there are additional points, you know, that you have at 2 AM, email Bart, do not call him.
Call him.
But I think
You
you'd
knock
be
on his
open for
door.
additional
Yeah.
comments as well.
Absolutely.
I thought of
I'm happy,
something.
so that's great.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
let's
Messenger
wrap up
courier.
that item, and moving on to, item 2 on the committee of the
Thanks,
whole,
Bart.
third quarter village financial report. Mr. Mark Manuelson, in the house,
In the house.
Wow.
bring it.
Well, for me, this is a regular task we do as the year progresses. We get more progressively in depth in our analysis and projections of, you know, where we see various factors impacting the current year budget. So I've done that on the face sheet of my finance director's memo, just in general, and then I have 2.5 pages of more departmental observations and highlights so that the faint of heart don't have to page through all the detail budget items. So I've done that. It's an ever-changing environment as more and more information comes in. I can tell you we've got a rebate from our workers' comp carrier for $24,000 as staff worked with that carrier and the state to revise our revised workers' comp rates for this year. So we got a credit on that.
Nice.
So that came in, so that was a very positive thing that was not reflected in this report. I really don't want to try to give you a contemporary update to this report, but maybe just reflect back on any questions you may have as of the date that this report was compiled, and be happy to try to address those as best I can.
I had a question about the $40,000 in service studies and plans in the board budget. Do you have a breakdown of that?
I do. Largely that's fire department related, and that number is growing fastly.
What's that number?
It's probably in excess of 50,000 now.
So that's to the Zimmerman and,
No, that's legal fees and other engagements, some repairs to the facility during these negotiations.
But that's not a study, that's not a survey
I
study.
can give you a breakdown, I can certainly do that. I don't have it memorized, but I can give you you're right, that's not a study, that would
I
have
mean,
shown
it was
up in a different.
40,000, I mean, I thought that the contract with the facilitator was 2,500. That's the number I'm thinking, but I don't remember, do you recall?
That was around the ballpark, but then again, you'll recall how the board had requested additional meetings. And so the schedule that she had scoped down was not the schedule that the board kept, so there were some additional meetings involved there. But to Mark's point, the majority was fire station.
Fire station legal.
Correct.
So we're like over $30,000 just in legal issues, not architectural, because we did ask for 15,000 additional on architectural work.
Right, we have that.
Is that in here, the 40,000?
It should be,
Oh,
yeah. And
Again, I'd be happy to run a report and email to everybody tomorrow morning with the details to that. I know that's a particularly current issue, so I can give you an update on that.
Any other points that you'd like either answered tonight or follow up on tomorrow?
Nobody else has questions, a couple other
Keep
questions.
going,
keep
Mike,
going.
you must
Keep
have
going.
questions,
Yeah, keep
Mike.
going,
Yeah.
I'm just scanning.
I think
all
you're just
these
warming
over,
up, so
over,
no
over.
rush, no rush. I'm not gonna
Okay,
close the
so back
discussion.
back to Duncan, where is the police, do you know what page the police department is on?
I can look it up for you pretty quick.
Is that 15 to 16?
Yeah, 15, 16, 17.
Okay, so our parking fines are down 30,000, and yet our Duncan is not changed. And I thought Duncan was kind of like a per ticket sort of thing, so.
It is.
Okay,
And
so,
that's why, you know, I mean, it's
so the
it's
difference.
a challenging network of fees, because the fees are for current. Parking fines are based on what people actually pay us, which tend to lag, a significant percentage
Yeah.
tend to lag. So we're issuing citations, and that's what the Duncan fees represent. The fines are what's actually collected based on that and aging items as well.
But I
So-
mean, we budget, so when we budget, they're both based on a certain estimate of the number of
Citations to be issued.
citations, yeah. So
We're a
So
little
is
low
the
on
issue-
collections right
it's,
now.
it's a collection,
Yes.
it's not a number of citations issued, it's collection.
That's correct.
Can I tag onto that?
No.
So that's something that, as a board, we might wanna consider when that contract comes up for renegotiation, is to maybe ask for a gain share model versus on percent collected versus on percent, or a number issued.
Well, you know, that's certainly one thing, I'll tell you that staff for a year and a half has been trying to pursue additional collections efforts in the Duncan, and those efforts have been stalled getting through the board. And that's one of the things the board just recently approved, and we're thinking, Jeremy thinking he's gonna get that in this month,
This week, yeah, this week or next.
this week or next week.
But then-
So I mean, these are things that have been in the works, but
Oh,
just.
no, I'm not
so-
saying staff is not doing due diligence, I'm
Yeah.
saying that our contract with Duncan may reflect the actual monies we receive versus the citations issued. Because if they get a percentage of the money that's collected instead of automatically paid and then we don't get
I'd
the,
be happy to look at other models with them
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's
to
just
get
a-
to that
it's-
point.
it's a thought.
Sure.
And keep in mind, the board did raise the parking fine amount to cover the cost of.
Of the Duncan system.
right, but they're still getting paid regardless of whether or not we receive that money.
Yeah, just point that out.
Yeah, no.
I had a question about recycling. And so there was, you mentioned in your memo that the revenue is down. And I know what we ended up contracting for was different than, was net of revenue, basically. So I just wanted to know overall the cost and the revenue, what's going on with that? Are we still ahead, or how are we doing on that?
Well, right, when we put out the RFPs for refuse and recycling collection, we asked them to quote us a net of rebate costs.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of that, our tonnage rates declined. At least for sure in refuse. Do you know if our tonnage rates did go down in
What does the
recycling
rebate
as well?
have to do with our tonnage? I'm
We don't pay
confused.
by the ton for recycling, it's.
Or
for
our household rates went down, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Do you recall?
They
I can
were-
look into it.
They were
and-
very similar,
okay.
um,
So they probably didn't go up as much.
but given that they were 10-year-old numbers, if you're doing your net present value,
Yeah.
looking at it that way, you could say that they went down.
Let me do a side analysis on that for you, if you don't mind.
but I mean, but we entered into those contracts, was it earlier this year? Was it, I mean, what, if we entered into a contract net with no revenue, then why would our revenue be down? You know what I mean? We shouldn't have any revenue. That's what's confusing me. Or did we enter into the contract
Well,
in mid-year?
if you recall, we had adopted a budget before we had concluded our
Right.
decision-making process of how we're gonna implement our refuse collections contracts. So those budget and contract years were not synchronized.
Okay,
Certainly, we could have done a better job at anticipating some of that information, so that it wouldn't have spiked as dramatically against budget. We would still have some greater revenues than we're currently displaying, but the recycling markets have been depressed significantly as far as the amount of money that the rebates would be based on. So we're really pretty close to a break-even percentage on that now, whereas maybe we would have gotten, at whatever the recycling materials market would have driven 2 years ago, it would have been better than what it is today, but
well, yeah, maybe what would be good is take a 2017, maybe 2016, 2017 under the old contract, and then just show us under the new contract, how are we, what the contract we entered into, and then how we're doing relative to that. I just wanna see, I understand that the revenues aren't there anymore, but then the costs went down too, right? So that.
well, that would,
Yeah, so that's.
conceptually, I think
That's the
you're
other part of,
absolutely
that's the other
right.
part of it that I wanted to
The,
see.
the challenge, and I certainly can do that, but the challenge, of course, is how do you tell what our contract would have been under the old situation when we renewed it 10 years later versus what they actually renewed it at?
Well, I'm saying, how
But-
much are we spending total?
I can tell you how
Well,
much
I'll
it
look at
increased
per
over a
capita
10-year period.
That we were spending under the old contract, and then we rebid it, and it's a different structure, and we don't show the revenue anymore, which is why I was confused that you showed a reduction, anyway. So, maybe not necessarily that there's a budgeted number for revenue that maybe shouldn't have been there given the new contract, right? But I'm interested in just how we were doing, how much it was costing us before, and how much it's costing us now.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Okay.
Anything else?
Oh, I have one question. I was looking at, for the police department, the electric, and I looked, there was a note in there saying that we had budgeted $40,000 for 2019, but we're already projecting for 2018 that we're at 50. And so, I guess, since and I don't know how that works, that's part of more of my question is, do we have the ability, knowing now going into 2019, to adjust that budget?
No,
Or-
no.
Okay. Okay.
But the takeaway from the 2018 information is that's both the old facility and the new facility. And it's a new facility during a construction cycle when consumption is not what we would call
Sure.
optimal.
Yep,
So we're still paying our half
got it.
of the cost for the facility next door until that deal can be concluded. So that was not contemplated in our original budget for 18.
I see. So it's
So-
that we're still paying for the electricity, so it's that we're paying from the construction and from our part of this building.
You're right.
This being-
The budget was built with the premise that the North Shore Fire Department would be the sole occupant of that building, therefore pay all of the utility costs. That has not proven to be the case.
Are we looking at energy saving measures for the new police building?
Yes.
Cause
Yeah,
even just
we've
for
got-
that building, it's pretty healthy though.
Yeah, we've got people online for that already, and again, what we're waiting for is a little more data to come in now that we're done with construction and we're not, having a lot of open doors, open workspaces, half installed systems, and we're definitely gonna take a good look at that as the year progresses.
But we concluded we don't wanna do solar there because of the ice issues.
I'm not aware of any discussions on that.
Should we come back to it?
It's just something to keep in mind. But there is ice crashing down from those towers sometimes.
On the market-to-market adjustment and interest, the income,
Mm-hmm.
you had 88,000 negative year-to-date and nothing projected for year-end. Do we see it's gonna be a
Those numbers are intended to net against each other at the end of the year. Market-to-market adjustments being a regulatory adjustment that we have to make to our investment holdings.
Mm-hmm.
And good news, interest rates are starting to go up a little bit. So we're gonna generate some more interest revenues, but the market-to-market adjustments then tend to go down because we've got existing holdings now comparatively worth a little bit less as current interest rates go up. So the accumulation between interest and market-to-market on the projected is reflected of adding those two numbers together. I can't predict what market-to-market, I can tell you the net interest versus market-to-market, the total of those two is what the projected numbers intended to reflect.
Okay. Yeah, cause you're showing 120,000 interest year-to-date, but it's offset by 88,000 negative market adjustment.
I'm thinking we'll have significantly more than 120,000 actual interest.
Mhm.
Any other questions?